This is the mop-up for October 23rd, October 24th, right? 2024, October 24, 2023. I'm David Feldman. Please like this show. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you can, help me out by sharing this with your friends via social media or email. Donald Trump is showing signs of dementia. He has a problem. If you watch his speeches, especially today up in New Hampshire, he's slurring his words, he's mispronouncing them worse than I do, and he gets his facts wrong, facts that he should know. You know, things he knows he's getting wrong these days. Every speech lately includes signs, not signs of his run-of-the-mill stupidity, but rather signs of clogged synapses. Now, maybe he's exhausted. 4 criminal trials, civil trials, that's got to take a toll on him. He's pushing 80. He eats horribly. I would assume he's not aging well. And he's exhausted. And he's depressed. And the only way he knows how to deal with sadness and depression is to lash out at others. So he's got some unresolved history that is making him demented. He is consumed by rage, and that can help somebody move forward, but I think it can only take you so far. So I'm doing a poll today in our live chat room, and I'm asking the people in our live chat room, do you think rage eats away at Donald Trump's brain cells or gives him strength? A lot of people disagree on this. I've talked about this with friends. They think it gives him strength. I think at this point, it's eating away at the limited brain cells he has. Politico reports, for example, that on the campaign trail in New Hampshire Monday, Donald Trump confused the leader of Hungary with the leader of Turkey and belied a dearth of knowledge when it comes to geography, stuff he should know. Trump referred to Hungary's leader, Viktor Orban, as the leader of Turkey, and then added that Hungary shares a border with Russia. Politico points out that neither Turkey nor Hungary are on the border with Russia. I mean, he's confusing Erdogan with Viktor Orban. That's like me confusing the Stones with the Beatles. That it's time to put daddy away when you don't know, when you can't tell your heroes apart. He worships these strong men. He should not be confusing Erdogan with Viktor Orban. Campaigning in New Hampshire on Monday, Donald Trump said it will be impossible for him to get a fair trial in his Washington, D.C. election interference case because the nation's capital doesn't care about real criminals. They only want to persecute Trump. Trump then told the crowd that he's not frightened of being thrown into prison for the rest of his life, saying, quote, "I don't mind being Nelson Mandela because I'm doing it for a reason." This is dementia. Donald Trump is comparing himself to Nelson Mandela. I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense. Well, I guess Trump is kind of like Nelson Mandela in that, actually, they're not at all similar. Nelson Mandela wanted to get rid of apartheid, and Trump's trying to bring it back. Rolling Stone reports that one of Trump's initial plans when he returns to the White House is to remove America from NATO. Trump wanted to leave NATO during his first term, but his advisors told him it was impossible. But Rolling Stone on Monday says Trump will only appoint NATO haters to his new administration and will demand that America pays less into the defense alliance than other members. He says it's not fair that we pay more than other members of NATO. He also wants to tear up Article 5, which says an attack against one is an attack against all. This is exactly what Vladimir Putin wants him to do. Rolling Stone reports that, fearing Trump's return, the Senate passed a bill this summer requiring a two-thirds majority from the Senate before a president could be authorized to pull America out of NATO. The bill was introduced by Republican Marco Rubio and Democrat Tim Kaine, but it has yet to be passed in the House. Asked to comment, Vivek Ramaswamy, the Grim Reaper, said he agreed with Trump, calling it reasonable to pull out of NATO, and then added when he's president, he will reevaluate America's membership to the United Nations. During a campaign stop in New Hampshire on Monday, Trump promised to ban any immigrants from America who, quote, don't like our religion. Take a listen.
And I will implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you don't like our religion, which a lot of them don't, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country and you are not getting in, right? We don't want you. Get out of here. You're fired.
Watch that. I'm going to go full screen here. It's demented. That worked in 2016, but now it just feels really old.
And I will implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you don't like our religion, which a lot of them don't, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country and you are not getting in, right? We don't want you. Get out of here. You're fired.
It's dementia. It's not cute. It's just... Anyway, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, by the way, specifically bans an official state religion in the United States. And then Trump tried to prove to everyone what a genius he is. This is scary. This man is not well.
I'm for us. I'm for us. You know how you spell us, right?
Ooh, yeah. How do you spell us? I knew this. Shit. It's been a while since Go on, I forgot. How do you spell us?
You spell us, U.S.
U.S., that's right, us. Okay. You went to Wharton. Continue. Go on.
I just picked that up. Has anyone ever thought of that before? I just picked that up. A couple of days I'm reading, and it said us. And I said, you know, if you think about it, us equals U.S. Isn't that?
Yeah, isn't that? Well, what are the odds that U.S., us, would stand for United States? And DJT, besides standing for Donald John Trump, also stands for Dick Job Titties. I was thinking about that today. Has anybody ever noticed that? Because I saw his initials, and I saw, oh, Donald Trump's initials are DJT, John Trump. And I thought, wait, those are the same exact initials for Dick Job Titty. I think about these things. Trump told voters that the 2020 election was stolen from him, and both he and America were cheated out of another 4 years of Donald Trump. Trump said, in fact, quote, we're going to be releasing some numbers next week that will make your head spin. Numbers about how the election was stolen. Numbers that will make our heads spin. You mean like Mar-a-Lago being worth $2.5 billion? Those head spinners? Are you planning to borrow against these new head-spinning numbers as well? Then he lamented his legal woes. He said, quote, but think of that. You get indicted because you protested an election. You get indicted because you protested an election. Yeah. All the man did was protest an election by ordering thousands of armed thugs to break into the Capitol and hang Mike Pence. He was just protesting an election. Now they want to indict him just because he threatened the lives of election workers in Georgia when they kept insisting Joe Biden won. He was just protesting an election. The race for Speaker continues, and this is now day 21 without a Speaker. On October 1st, our government's fiscal year began without a 2024 budget. There is a continuing resolution that will keep things going until November 17th, and then it all shuts down, and the Republicans get exactly what they want. No government. That's exactly what they want. House Republicans gathered late Monday evening to listen to the candidates for Speaker. They met inside the Ways and Means Committee room. During their question and answer period, the subject turned to the border and the prosecution of Donald Trump. So Marjorie Taylor Greene asked, which one of you has the balls to hold Homeland Security and the Justice Department accountable? And then Marjorie poured out of her jeans saying, because I have them. It turns out she does. She has the balls. Monday began with 9 official candidates for Speaker. By early evening, it was down to 8. During the conference, it was announced that Dan Meuser of Pennsylvania would no longer be a candidate for Speaker because Jim Jordan threw him off the top of the Washington Monument. Early this morning, they will meet back in the room and cast secret ballots. And Punchbowl predicts that with 8 candidates, they will have to go a couple of rounds. They're not going to have a candidate immediately, so they're going to need a couple of rounds of mimosas, I think. Punchbowl doesn't predict the nominee will be taken to the House floor for a vote today. That will probably happen tomorrow, since whoever the nominee ends up being will want at least 24 hours to lobby for votes and beg Jim Jordan to stop lopping off the heads of Northerners in Statuary Hall. He's been doing that lately. He's from Ohio. Why is he chopping the heads off of Northerners in Statuary Hall? He's angry. By noon on Monday, Kevin McCarthy had sidled up to Jim Jordan 5 separate times in front of others and said, so how do you like the bidet Nancy Pelosi installed in the private bathroom inside the Speaker's office? Oh, wait, you lost, I forgot. Then he would walk away laughing. When it looked like the candidate for Speaker, Kevin Hern, seemed to be the front runner, Republican Steve Womack and French Hill accidentally bumped heads trying to fillet him. Well, this is where it stands. Early Tuesday morning, there are now 8 candidates for Speaker, and 7 out of 8 are election deniers. All but Whip Tom Emmer, he's from Minnesota, and Austin Scott of Georgia, all but those 2 refuse to certify the election for Joe Biden. I got that wrong. 6 out of 8 are election deniers. Going into this on Tuesday, the frontrunner now seems to be Tom Emmer, who is currently the whip, which means he's coming into this with the distinct advantage of a campaign apparatus of surrogates who've been working the phones for him. He has a proven track record of leadership. It's why former Speaker Kevin McCarthy immediately endorsed him. But because the Republican Party has been hijacked by an autocrat, Donald Trump, policy, experience, or saving the institution is of no import compared to being loyal to Donald Trump. And Tom Emmer voted to certify Joe Biden in 2020, so he's got a Trump problem because that's all Donald Trump cares about, that Emmer voted to certify the election for Joe Biden back in 2020. And the Trump attack machine, consisting of Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, and Boris Epshteyn, unleashed the anti-Emmer furies over the weekend. Politico reports Trump is very angry and disappointed that Emmer has yet to endorse him for president. And When Emmer was in charge of the Republican Party's 2022 House political arm, this was during the midterms, Emmer went on record urging House candidates, Republican House candidates, to distance themselves from Trump and focus on the needs of their own districts. But you're supposed to focus on the needs of Donald Trump. So Emmer and Trump reportedly talked over the phone Saturday. Emmer surrogates are stressing that Trump should respect Emmer. He's never once said a bad word about Donald Trump. Emmer supported Trump in both 2016 and 2020, and Emmer keeps a framed photograph of Donald Trump on his desk, and he pleasures himself to it before going home to his wife. The call between Trump and Emmer didn't work. Leanne Caldwell from the Washington Post said after the two of them spoke, Trump ordered his surrogates, get him, and they went after him. Politico says Matt Gaetz supports Emmer and is trying to ease tensions between the two men, but from what I understand about the latest ethics investigation, not sure Matt Gaetz is the guy you want easing tension between two men. Byron Donalds, the Republican from Florida, who is also making a run for Speaker, insisted late Monday night that Donald Trump was staying out of the race. He was not interfering. Donalds acknowledged that Trump actively lobbied on behalf of Jim Jordan, but now is taking a hands-off approach and focusing instead on winning the nomination for president. I don't think that's true. Politico reports that Emmer has more than a Trump problem. His colleagues resent the fact that he won the whip race. And, they don't like getting whipped, and he became the whip. We're just talking about brute jealousy here. Politico reports that should Emmer get the nomination, just because he won the whip vote, he has at least 10 hard no's when he goes to the floor, just out of jealousy, petty jealousy. And as if this Republican caucus couldn't get any pettier, now Emmer is also taking flack for not supporting Jim Jordan hard enough last week in Jim Jordan's bid for Speaker. Emmer voted for Jordan, but not hard enough. So the thinking is, why should Jim Jordan show any fealty and endorse him? By the way, not hard enough is what Jim Jordan screamed last night at Madame Lafarte, his BDSM mistress, while she paddled his nasty fanny with a wooden spoon while ordering him to eat her bunions. That's true. You might notice none of this politicking that's going on for Speaker involves horse trading or deals or bringing pork back to their individual districts. It has nothing to do with what's good for the American people. It's, you did this to me, or you didn't do enough for me. Looks to me like drama, not drag queens, are the Republican Party's biggest problem right now. It is a party, a caucus of drama queens. Well, let's turn to Israel and the fighting. The consensus in the room last night, as they were listening to the candidates, is that every Republican wants to fund Israel, but a lot of them want to cut off Ukraine. In his nationally televised speech last week, as well as in conversations with Israeli and other world leaders, President Joe Biden has made it abundantly clear America has three priorities when it comes to the situation in Israel and Gaza. I think Joe Biden has done a pretty great job outlining what America wants. He says there are three priorities. First, give Israel all the weapons and support it needs to defeat Hamas. Second, to guarantee humanitarian aid flows into Gaza and gets to the people who need it. And third is to guarantee safe passage out of Gaza to those who want to leave, including American civilians still stuck there, as well as the hostages. That has been the message that Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken has been giving to all parties, those three principles. How do we get the hostages out? So far, Hamas has released 4. Biden's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, said over the weekend that Hamas is preventing American citizens from leaving Gaza. We have Palestinian Americans, United States citizens, visiting relatives who are stuck in Gaza and they can't get out. Along the Egyptian border with Gaza is the Rafah crossing, where humanitarian aid is supposed to be flowing into Gaza. Biden has urged Egypt to accept refugees who want to leave Gaza, but so far Egypt shows no sign of willingness to accept them. There seems to be something in the works. There is, I don't want to say hope, but the European Union leaders and Joe Biden are changing the language. Ceasefire doesn't work. So now they're using the term humanitarian pause, a humanitarian pause. Israel currently has 360,000 troops amassed the border, ready to go in, with Benjamin Netanyahu talking incredibly tough. Perhaps this is posturing. Perhaps this is a negotiating ploy to get Hamas to release the hostages in exchange for Netanyahu calling off the ground attack. A ground attack that's becoming increasingly unpopular in America and Israel. Perhaps this humanitarian pause that the EU and Joe Biden are talking about, and maybe this is wishful thinking, perhaps a humanitarian pause could open up the possibility of the United Nations spearheading a peacekeeping force on the ground inside Gaza, which takes Gaza off Israel's hands. We talked about Thomas Friedman's piece in the New York Times yesterday and how if Israel goes in, they can't go out. If they go in on the ground, the EU, the Arab League, NATO, nobody will take Gaza off Israel's hands if there's a ground invasion. More and more Americans, including the Biden administration, don't see any upside to a ground attack. They think it jeopardizes getting the hostages back, and it would be a bloody extended battle that may expand the war along other fronts, including up to the north of Israel with Lebanon, and of course Iran, which has warned that they would see to it that Israel pays a heavy price for destroying Gaza. It's not so easy to get attacked and then whip out a baseball bat and decide to go smash some skulls. You want to do that, but if you're thinking one step ahead, not so easy. Iran seems to be testing America's resolve, and of course Israel's. Admiral John Kirby is President Biden's national security spokesman. On Monday, he warned of an uptick in rocket and drone attacks against American military stationed in Iraq and Syria. Kirby said Iran was behind those strikes, which have yet to hit any Americans. But what happens if Americans get hit? Kirby also said Iran is actively engaged in fomenting violence along Israel's southern border, down near Gaza, by providing weapons to Hamas, and along Israel's northern border by providing weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Like Yasser Arafat's Palestine Liberation Organization, Hezbollah is transforming itself, going from a terrorist organization, at least perceived by the West as a terrorist organization, to a standing army within a state and a political party, just like the PLO started Fatah, which runs the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. They start off as terrorists, and then The idea is to move them along and turn them into political parties you can negotiate with. And Hezbollah has participated in Lebanon's elections since 1992. Its military wing primarily occupies southern Lebanon, and it is not the same as Lebanon's official army. In fact, many say Hezbollah's firepower is significantly more powerful than the standing army that belongs to Lebanon. Netanyahu warned he will hold all of Lebanon responsible for any attacks from Hezbollah, which is said to have 150,000 Iranian missiles pointing directly at Israel. Admiral Kirby said on Monday that America is certain that Iran was complicit in Hamas's attack on Israel. They're not so certain they funded it. Admiral Kirby said that Iran has partnered with Hamas for decades. He said Hamas wouldn't exist without Iran. But, like I said, he said that intelligence agencies have yet to determine whether Iran was hands-on with the October 7th massacre in Israel. There's no evidence yet that Iran funded the attack. Kirby was unable to say what a post-Hamas Gaza would look like, and said conversations between Israel and Biden have focused primarily on rooting out Hamas and not what comes next. Well, George W. Bush had absolutely no idea what came after toppling Saddam Hussein when he was planning his illegal invasion of Iraq back in 2003. The Bush administration automatically assumed democracy would just take hold once Saddam Hussein left and Iraqis could govern themselves. Zero planning for a post-Saddam world. That is one of George W. Bush's legacies. He invaded Iraq, toppled Saddam Hussein with no idea that there was a difference between Sunni and Shiites and that there would be internal strife and fighting for power. He literally did not know when he launched the invasion that Iraq was made up of Sunnis and Shiites who didn't always get along. No plan for what comes next. So, if Netanyahu doesn't launch a ground assault, it would partly be because Biden and Blinken have warned him not to make the same mistakes America made after 9/11. Admiral Kirby said on Monday that Biden is focusing on the humanitarian aid and could offer no information as to the likely timetable of this Israeli ground invasion, which we are hearing Biden is urging against. Biden is saying humanitarian pause until humanitarian aid has been delivered and the hostages are returned. Admiral Kirby was asked on Monday how Americans can be certain that humanitarian aid delivered to Gaza isn't absconded with by Hamas, and how do you make sure it goes to the people who need it? He said that would be left to our trusted allies on the ground, primarily United Nations relief workers. Maybe there can be peacekeepers, United Nations peacekeepers, sent into Gaza. Maybe. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has sent 2 aircraft carriers to the region in order to tell other countries, do not mess with Israel. But will America's military presence calm the waters in the Middle East? America dispatches its destroyers in and around South Korea whenever North Korea is building rockets, and it doesn't seem to stop North Korea from building and launching rockets. America has flexed its muscles in the region surrounding Ukraine in the lead up to Russia's invasion, but that didn't stop Russia from going in. And America's military muscle doesn't seem to be keeping China from menacing Taiwan or the Philippines. So Kirby stressed that America can't do it alone, that President Biden's strategy in the Middle East will be identical to his strategy for Ukraine, and that is building partnerships with neighboring allies, which goes back to the top of the show, Donald Trump's dementia. He's talking about getting out of NATO. It sounds good, but we can't go it alone. A lot of tough-talking Republicans like Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump. They sound eerily reminiscent of George W. Bush. The UN said, don't go into Iraq, and he said, you're either with us or against us. The UN was right. George W. Bush was wrong, and our soldiers came home, the ones who were lucky enough to come home, many of them permanently damaged. There's this fantasy that America spends more on weapons than the entire world combined. We don't need anybody. Well, we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam and Korea and World War II, you cannot do this without partnerships. Most importantly, to prevent wars. Article 5 of the NATO agreement is what prevents wars. It's what keeps us from going into World War III. The arrogance of some of these Republicans is amazing. And George W. Bush is talking about how Netanyahu has to go in right now. You don't negotiate with terrorists. He said it's probably not going to be politically expedient for Netanyahu, but he's got to go in there and crush Hamas. Good rule of thumb is whatever George W. Bush advises, run. Run for the hills. This is why we need an international criminal court. So, well, we do have one, but America won't be a signatory. George W. Bush should be in jail right now, not opining on what Benjamin Netanyahu should be doing with Hamas. Biden sent a $104 billion supplemental to Congress, and Kirby said it ultimately has to be approved by the House and the Senate. He implied that Biden is attaching no strings to the weapons that Israel can use. It's a blank check to Israel. This is a $104 billion supplemental. I think $14 billion of that is earmarked for Israel. The rest is for Ukraine, humanitarian aid around the world, and border security, and shoring up Taiwan and neighboring countries. So $14 billion they want to send to Israel with absolutely no strings attached. Senate Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's all in on Joe Biden's $106 billion aid package, which will be for Ukraine and Israel. And it's mostly for Ukraine. It also includes money for border security, humanitarian aid, and fortifying our allies who neighbor China to protect Taiwan. But Republican freshman Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio is already expressing misgivings about bundling all these spending bills into one package. And he says he wants to sever Ukraine funding from Israel, saying he's all in on funding Israel, but Ukraine leaves him with questions. Like, why are we helping Ukraine when I'm on the side of Putin? That's his question, but he can't really say that. Vance said the difference between funding Israel and Ukraine is America has a specific plan in Israel, while in Ukraine it does not. And, to the uninitiated, that sounds wise, but it's complete and utter BS. Because America does have a plan in Israel. He's right. He's absolutely right. But what he's not saying is that plan is to follow the Oslo Accords, ironed out back in 1993 by President Clinton, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. So yeah, J.D. Vance is right. America does have a very specific plan when it comes to Israel. I'd like J.D. Vance to weigh in on America's official plan for Israel, because it's called a two-state solution. The West Bank, which sits between Jordan and Israel, would be turned into a Palestinian state. The non-contiguous Gaza Strip, where Hamas is, it sits between Egypt and Israel. That Gaza Strip would also be combined with the West Bank as well as East Jerusalem in order to create a fully realized Palestinian state. So yeah, J.D. Vance, you're right. America does have a plan when it comes to Israel. That has been America's official plan since 1993. It's also been the United Nations' official plan since 1993. But Israel's current prime minister, Bibi Netanyahu, has ruled Israel for 16 years and has openly scorned the two-state solution, simultaneously flouting America's wishes by allowing Jewish settlers to build homes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, land carved out in the Oslo Accords that specifically for the Palestinians. So, J.D. Vance, you said, America has a plan for Israel. That is the plan. So, would you like to opine on the Oslo Accords and the settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem? Because there are now almost 500,000 Jewish settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem in direct violation of America's plan for Israel, J.D. Vance. So you want to talk about that? Netanyahu has formed a coalition government teaming with ultra-right-wing ethno-nationalists who openly vilify the Arab people and see them as inferior, deserving of being second-class citizens. And he's scuppering the two-state solution. So America has a plan, J.D. Vance. Are you happy with Benjamin Netanyahu, the way he's working our plan? So, yeah, J.D. Vance, when you say America has a very specific plan when it comes to Israel, let's be honest, you're being disingenuous, because Israel is not following America's plan. It isn't, because of Benjamin Netanyahu and this right-wing, ultra-right-wing government. Now, as for funding Ukraine, J.D. Vance says he doesn't want to say, he doesn't really want to say what he's thinking. He can't. So he says, like most Republicans, he claims Ukraine is problematic because it doesn't have a clear-cut plan. What you really want to say is you're rooting for Putin, because Putin is the great white Christian hope who cracks down on the LGBTQ community, the media, democracy. But you can't say that. But that's why you're against funding for Ukraine. You say there's no plan, that America doesn't have a plan for Ukraine. The president of Ukraine has made his objectives quite clear, and that is drive Russia out of Ukraine. Can't be any clearer than that. That's a plan. But there are Republicans who are too frightened to admit out loud that they represent hard right, Putin-loving Americans who see the Russian leader as a hard right visionary, willing to take on the liberals in Russia, the media, the non-Christian dogma of the left, while openly persecuting the LGBTQ community in Russia, while employing strong-arm tactics to make voting unnecessary. Putin is the Republican Party. He is. It's just hard for people like J.D. Vance to admit that to voters. Bad guy, J.D. Vance, hillbilly elegy, graduate of Yale, hedge funds, bad guy, really. In fact, Ross Story reports that on October 3rd of this year, J.D. Vance finally sold his $100,000 worth of Walmart stock. 2 years it took him to sell his Walmart stock. 2 years ago, it was revealed that J.D. Vance owned stock in Walmart, while at the same time he was running for Senate and railing against Walmart for using slave labor in China and decimating Main Street USA. And when it was discovered, he, as a hedge fund manager, owned $100,000 worth of Walmart stock. Took him 2 years to finally get around to selling his Walmart stock. These Republicans are all full of shit, and I have some good news, though. Ron DeSantis will not get the nomination. There is talk now that he and Tim Scott may not make it to Iowa. As for Ron DeSantis or Trump, personally, and I'm probably wrong, I would rather have Trump be president than Ron DeSantis. I think with Trump's dementia getting worse, I don't think this country has the vocabulary and the means to become a full-bore fascist state with Donald Trump running it. I just don't. Ron DeSantis, maybe. Ron DeSantis knows how to pull the levers of power. And this is Donald Trump's cat. He ran out of Trump Tower, so I've been holding on to Donald Trump's cat. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. We have a poll in the chat room here on YouTube. Thank you for participating in it. Let me go see what the results are of power. Okay. So, we have close to 1,200 votes. Wow. And the poll it was kind of interesting because we're talking about Donald Trump, his dementia. He has mid-stage episodes of dementia. Watch his speeches. So the question I asked is, do you believe rage eats away at Trump's brain cells or keeps them sharp? I know a lot of seniors who say they need their rage, keeps them sharp. But a lot of doctors say rage is, if you're a rageaholic, the adrenaline and whatever, the oxytocin, whatever it produces, ends up eating your brain cells the way alcohol does. So the question was, eats his brain cells, keeps him sharp, or Ron DeSantis is a fascist pig? I don't know why I put that in there, but has nothing to do with... I shouldn't be so angry when I'm writing these polls. So do you believe rage eats away at Trump's brain cells or keeps him sharp? You have three choices. Eats his brain cells, keeps him sharp. Ron DeSantis is a fascist pig. Coming in 3 at 5%, we have 1,242 votes. That's incredible. 5% of you said it keeps him sharp. 36% said Ron DeSantis is a fascist pig. That had nothing to do with the question. And 59%. So that's a good majority believe that rage, Donald Trump's rage, is eating away at his brain cells. Yeah, anger is not good for you. I sometimes use it to get out of bed in the morning, to feel energized. But in the end, it's not healthy to be angry all the time. And you're going to see this with Donald Trump. There are other reasons he's not debating. And you're going to see cognitive decline in his speeches. We're months away from Iowa. There's plenty of time for this cognitive decline to manifest itself. Thank you all for filling out the poll. Please share this with your friends. I would appreciate that through social media or through email. Please like this video. That helps. And please subscribe to my channel. This is an audio podcast, so you can take this wherever you want. Please subscribe to this wherever you get your audio podcasts. Thank you to Bob in the chat room. And we were able to do this a little earlier. Last night, I don't even want to talk about last night. Thank you all for being here. I will try to do this at 12:05 tomorrow. Thank you so much.